Hey there, all you philosophy fans out there, ready to really get into it today. We're going deep on something that seems, well, kind of basic at first, but trust me, it gets wild. Determinables and determinates. And since you're a philosopher, I know you're going to love where this goes.
It's a relationship between properties we use all the time without even realizing it, really. Like, it's everywhere once you start noticing it.
Right, totally. Like you just know red is a color, but nobody ever says Plato is a man in that same way. So to guide this deep dive, we've got the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, their entry on, you guess it, determinables and determinants. Should be fun.
Lots to unpack there, for sure. So where do we even begin? What is this whole determination thing anyway?
Well, think of it this way. One property is basically a more specific version of another. It's like a family tree, but for properties, right? So you've got the parent property, that's your determinable, and then the child property, that's the determinate. Like color would be the determinable, and then all the colors like red, blue, green, those are the determinants. Yeah. Same with shape. Shape is the big one. And then circular, triangular, even something like amorphous, those are all determinants of shape.
Okay, good start. But determination is a bit more than just sorting things into categories, though, right? It's not just that red happens to be in the color group. It's tighter than that, a more essential connection. We have to be careful not to mix it up with other ways properties can be related.
Gotcha. Okay, so what other relationships are we talking about here, and how are they different?
Well, there's the classic genus and species thing. Man is an animal, that kind of thing. But that's not what's happening with determination. Red isn't just colored plus something extra, right? Like, you can't just say it's colored plus a certain wavelength of light. That would make it a conjunctive property, like it's built from smaller pieces. But determination isn't like that at all.
So if red isn't just colored with something tacked on, what makes it so special? The source actually lists a bunch of features that define determination. Honestly, it gets pretty complex.
Let's take it step by step. One of the biggies is specificity. Pretty straightforward. Scarlet is more specific than red, and red is more specific than color. It's levels of detail, like you're zooming in from a broad category to a very, very precise shade.
Like those Russian nesting dolls. Each one is both bigger and smaller than the others, depending on which ones you're comparing.
Right, and that leads to another key thing. Determination only goes one way. If scarlet determines red, then red can't determine scarlet. It's a hierarchy, not a roundabout.
So all scarlet things are red, but not all red things are scarlet.
Yeah.
Makes sense. But wait, if it's one way, how can something be both a determinate and a determinable at the same time?
Ah, good catch. That's another feature the source points out. It all depends on where you are in that hierarchy we were talking about. So red is a determinate of color, but it's also a determinable of scarlet. It's all relative.
I think I'm getting it. It's like each level can look up and down the ladder, so to speak. So this levels idea is pretty important then, isn't it? It's not just a simple two-level system.
Exactly. And that helps us understand another feature, how determinates can be similar. Think about all the different reds. They're all distinct, sure, but they're similar in a way that red and blue aren't. You know what I mean? That's because they all share the determinable redness. It's what lets us compare them. Like, we can say scarlet is closer to crimson than to blue because they're all under the umbrella of red.
So that shared determinable, it's like a common denominator that lets us group things and then compare within that group. We don't compare apples and oranges directly, but we might compare different apples because they're all apples, right?
Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to that idea that red isn't just colored plus something else.
Exactly. The source is very clear about this determination isn't conjunctive or disjunctive. Color isn't just a huge list of every possible color, and red isn't colored with some extra ingredient.
Right. So far, we've got this hierarchy, levels of being specific, and properties in common that help us compare things. What else should we know?
Well, there's inheritance. Can't forget that one. If something is scarlet, it's automatically also red and colored. The determinant inherits everything from the properties above it all the way up.
Like a package deal. You can't get the grandchild property without the parent and grandparent properties, too. And that seems connected to another feature mentioned in the source, requisite determination. Help me out with that one.
Basically, it means that anything with a determinable HH has to have one of its determinants, too, at every level. You can't just be vaguely colored. You got to be a specific color and a specific shade of that color, and so on.
It's like the universe is saying, pick a side, no fence sitting allowed. But even with all that specificity, there's still variety.
Right.
That's what the source calls multiple determinants.
Right. For any given determinant, there are others at the same level. Color has lots of determinants, red has lots of determinants, and so on. You can't be colorless, but you do get to choose which color you are.
So this is a system where properties are locked into this hierarchy, but with options at each level.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't just mix and match from different levels, right? There are rules.
You got it. That's where determinate incompatibility comes in.
Hmm.
You can only be one specific color at a time. You can't be scarlet, Andy, indigo at the same time. You got to commit to one. And this leads to unique determination. Anything with a determinable, it's got exactly one determinant for any level, no more, no less.
It's those choose-your-own-adventure books. You pick one path at a time, can't be the brave knight Andy, the sneaky rogue all at once. This determination thing is getting pretty intense.
It is. And there's one more piece before we get to the really crazy stuff. Something called asymmetric modal dependence. Basically, it means if something's a determinate, it has to have its determinable, but not the other way around. Something can be red without being scarlet, but if it's scarlet, it has to be red.
So it's a one-way guarantee again. Scarlet means you get red for free, but red doesn't promise you scarlet. We keep coming back to this hierarchy, don't we? It's like it's built into the whole idea of determination.
It is. And really understanding that hierarchy is key to unlocking all the deeper philosophical implications of all of this. That's where we're headed next.
Okay, so many features to keep track of. My head's spinning a little, honestly, but I'm ready for more. The source says all these features, they really affect how determinables and determinates actually work out there in the world. What's next?
This is where it gets really interesting and where philosophers start, disagreeing with each other. The source talks about three main groups, three camps in this debate. We've got the anti-realists, the reductionists, and the non-reductionists.
Okay, one at a time. Let's start with those anti-realists. What are they all about?
Pretty much what the name says. They're not so sure about determinables actually existing. They might say something like, yeah, we use words like color and shape and all, but those are just like convenient labels, not real properties that are actually out there. It's the most specific properties, the determinates, that matter to them.
So it's like they're saying the world is made of pixels, not paintings. We see the big picture and we categorize things, but at the end of the day, it's all about the individual determinate properties. That's a pretty different way of looking at it.
It is, and the source mentions a few different types of anti-realism. Some say determinable terms refer kind of vaguely to determinate features. Others are more practical about it, saying determinable terms are useful for like keeping track of how similar things are, even if there's no real determinable property holding them together. They're all about showing that determinables aren't something extra, something added on in the world.
So they want to explain away that feeling we talked about before, that there's something special about the way red and color relate to each other. Makes sense if you want to keep things simple, right? Keep your ontology nice and clean. But what about the reductionists then? Do they think determinables are real?
Yeah, they do, but they think we can, break them down, reduce them to determinates. They're real, but not a different kind of thing from determinates, more like a complicated arrangement of them. It's like building with Legos. You can build all sorts of things from those same basic blocks.
I like that. Okay, so for the reductionists, it's like the determinable is the blueprint and the determinates are those individual Lego pieces. But how do they actually try to make that work to build the determinable?
Well, the source says the most common way is called disjunctive reductionism. They basically say determinables are just like disjunctions of their determinates.
Wait, remind me, disjunction, what was that again? It's been a minute since my logic class.
Think Eisler. So the disjunctive reductionist would say color is the same as saying red or blue or green or yellow or R. You get the idea, all the possible colors. The determinable is just one big either statement about all the specific options.
Oh, so they're saying color is like a shortcut to talk about all the determinate colors put together. Seems pretty simple, but are there problems with that idea? The source mentions some issues with reductionism.
Yeah, some big ones. One is that disjunctive reductionism, it doesn't really match up with how we actually experience things, how we perceive the world. If determinables were just disjunctions, like we said, everything should be maximally determinate, right? But think about that color gradient, the Soleil's paradox. You slowly shift from one shade to the next. We don't see each tiny step as a totally separate, maximally specific color.
That's a good point. Color is way more smooth and flowing than just a list of possibilities, this or that. And doesn't this mean that you have to know every single shade of blue to understand what blue is? That doesn't seem right.
Exactly. So there are definitely some issues with the reductionist approach, at least the disjunctive one.
Okay, so anti-realists say they don't exist. Reductionists say they're just fancy versions of determinants. What about the non-reductionists? What do they say?
They're the ones who say, no, determinables are real indeed. They can't be reduced to determinants. They have their own special thing going on, their own relationship with determinants. Not like those Legos anymore. The determinable isn't just built from smaller pieces.
Okay, now I'm really curious. So for them, determinables are real, distinct, and irreducible. What kind of arguments do they use to support that view?
The source talks about a few different non-reductionist accounts. One's based on the idea of essences.
Essences, like what something fundamentally is.
Right. They say determinables have their own unique essence, a core set of features that makes them what they are. And the essence of a determinant, it includes the essence of its determinable plus some extra stuff to make it more specific.
So each determinable has its own blueprint, and determinants are built from that, but with some added details.
Right.
That makes sense to me. What else is there?
Another one uses causal powers. The idea here is that determinables and determinants, they have different sets of causal powers, and the powers a determinable has are just a subset of the powers its determinants have.
Okay, quick reminder. Causal powers, what are those again?
Basically, what a property can do, what effects it can cause. So, like, being red might make a pigeon peck at something, but being scarlet might make a pickier bird peck, one that likes specific shades of red.
Ah, so the determinate scarlet can do more than the determinable red because it affects more situations or more types of things.
Exactly. And this idea, it explains that causal compatibility thing we talked about before. Determinables and determinants don't, like, fight for control because the determinant already includes all the determinable's powers. They work together.
That makes a lot of sense. Any other non-reductionist accounts?
Yeah, there are constitution-based accounts, too. These say that determinables are, in a way, parts or constituents of their determinants. Imagine building a house, the determinable is like the foundation, and the determinants are the different rooms built on top of it.
So determinants extend the determinable, adding more structure, making things more specific. And I guess that would explain determinant similarity, too.
No, they're similar because they share the same foundation, the same determinable underneath it all.
You got it. All these non-reductionist accounts, they give us some good reasons to think determinables are real and different from determinants, and that they have their own role in how the world works, in its causal structure. I can see why people find the non-reductionists appealing. They really get at that feeling that determinables are more than just names we give things or some logical trick. They matter, they shape what's possible, they make things happen. But even among the non-reductionists, there's another debate, right? About how fundamental determinables really are.
Right. Even if they agree on that, they still argue about whether determinables are, in the end, less fundamental than determinants. Do they depend on their determinants to exist, or could they be fundamental parts of reality themselves? That's the big question.
All right, so we've got these different views, right? The anti-realists who say determinables aren't even real, the reductionists who want to build them up from determinants, and then the non-reductionists, they're the ones saying determinables are their own thing, totally unique. But even among those non-reductionists, they can't agree on whether determinables are, like, less fundamental than determinants.
What are the arguments there?
It's a really big question. It gets at the heart of how we understand reality itself. Like, are the most basic building blocks of the world, are those the super specific determinate properties with determinables just being, a side effect? Or could determinables be fundamental too, shaping what's even possible for those specific details?
So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do specific properties make the general categories, or do the categories set the stage for the specifics?
That's it. And the source goes through a bunch of arguments for both sides. One argument for determinants being more fundamental, it uses that asymmetry we were talking about before. You know, how determinants necessitate their determinables, but not the other way around. Like if something's scarlet, it's got to be red, but it can be red without being scarlet.
Right, that one-way guarantee. It does seem like determinants are more important, like they're doing the real work. But couldn't you say determinables are still key because they're the ones that define what's even possible? Like, color sets the stage for all the specific colors, even if those colors are what actually make something colored in the end.
Yeah, that's a good point, and the source brings that up too. It even uses an example from science to show how determinables could be fundamental, even if they don't, like directly decide the specific properties of things.
Ooh, a science analogy.
Okay,
Unless...
so think about scientific laws and like initial conditions. The determinable mass, for instance, that's like a fundamental law of physics, right? It
Right.
doesn't say how much mass any particular object has, but it tells us what mass even is. And then the determinate masses of things, those are like initial conditions, the specific values that fit into that law.
So mass is the rule book, telling us the rules of the game, and the determinate masses are the specific moves within the game, the actual numbers we see.
You got it. And just like you need both rules and moves to play the game, you might need both determinables and determinates to have a world. Determinables provide the framework, the big picture, and then determinates fill in the blanks.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's not about building up, it's more like setting the stage.
Hmm.
But what about the other arguments for determinants being more fundamental? There were more, right?
Yeah, one talks about naturalness. It says that determinates are more natural because they divide things up into more precise categories. So things that share a determinate property, like being scarlet, they're more alike than things that just share being red, the determinable.
So determinants give us a more detailed and accurate picture of the world, and that makes them more fundamental.
Pretty much. But the source actually points out that you could use that same logic for determinables. Determinables make natural groups of determinants, the same way determinants make natural groups of objects. It's those nesting dolls all over again, but for how reality itself is structured.
So it goes both ways. Determinables group, determinants group objects.
Exactly. And then there's the argument from fixing. This one says that if you know all the determinate facts about the world, you automatically know all the determinable facts too. Know the specifics, and you've got the general stuff covered.
That sounds like a strong point for determinants being more basic. If they fix the determinables, it's hard to see how determinables could be more fundamental.
Seems that way, right? But the source has a really cool counterargument. It says determinable facts, they include modal facts about what's possible, not just what's actually true right now.
Modal facts. Remind me what those are again.
Facts about what could be true, what's possible or necessary. So like for a red object, a modal fact would be that it could have been scarlet instead. It's about what could be, not just what is.
Ah, okay. And determinate facts don't cover those possibilities.
Nope. The idea is that to really know a determinable fact, you need more than just determinate facts. You need the determinable itself to understand the whole range of possibilities.
So after all that, it seems like we still don't have a clear answer about whether determinables are fundamental or not.
It's still an open question. The source even says that some determinables, they might actually be fundamental, like they might be shaping the very structure of reality. And that idea, that has some really big implications for how we see the world.
All right, lay it on me. What
Well,
kind of implications?
For one thing, it challenges the idea that fundamental things are independent and separate. If both determinables and determinates can be fundamental, then the most basic parts of reality, they might be intertwined, even dependent on each other.
Like the basic ingredients of the universe. They're holding hands, not just standing alone.
That's a good way to put it.
Hmm.
And it changes how we think about dependence, too. Usually we think of dependence as going one way, the more basic things supporting the less basic ones. But if determinables and determinates both support each other, dependence might go both ways.
That's a big change in how we think about things. It's like the foundation of a house. It can also depend on the walls and the roof, not just the other way around.
Exactly. And this idea of fundamental determinables, it gives us new ways to think about all sorts of things in philosophy, like laws of nature, how our minds cause things to happen, even that weirdness within determinacy in quantum mechanics.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. Started with what seemed like a simple question. What does it mean for one property to be a type of another? And we ended up talking about the very foundation of reality.
That's philosophy for you. Sometimes the simplest things lead to the biggest questions.
I love it. So for all you listeners out there, next time you come across a simple idea like color or shape, remember there's a whole world of philosophy hidden underneath, just waiting to be explored.
And if you're thinking about reality itself, what it's made of, remember even the simplest building blocks might be more connected than we think.
Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.